Hello there. Tonight, step into the hush of a fog-kissed European town in the late 1950s, where carnival lights flicker like restless fireflies and laughter echoes down rain-slicked cobblestones. Our tale follows a celebrated jester whose jokes ignite thunderous applause, even as a strange melancholy shadows each performance. What secret weight drags at a heart dressed in bright colors? Journey with us through candlelit alleyways, forgotten theaters, and midnight consultations as lives intertwine in search of joy's true cost. Identities blur, loyalties splinter, and somewhere amid the sawdust and spotlight, a revelation waits, one that will challenge everything you believe about humor, sorrow, and the fragile line between them. Moonlight pooled like liquid silver across the deserted fairgrounds, painting the silent rides and shuttered food stalls in ghostly hues. At the center of the grounds stood the Aurelian circus tent, its candy-striped canvas rippling in the nocturnal breeze like the lungs of some sleeping beast. Inside, where a few hours earlier a sold-out crowd had howled with delight, only echoes and the scent of sawdust remained. Pavel Kovac sat alone on a wooden trunk just off the ring. His grease-paint smile cracked at the edges from sweat and exhaustion. The bulbous red nose sat lopsided, forgotten in one hand. The applause of hundreds still rang in his ears, but in this hush it sounded distant, hollow, an ocean shell held to a lonely ear. He watched a solitary spotlight sway overhead, a languid pendulum illuminating the empty seats, rows upon rows of absence. It reminded Pavel of the chasm he carried within, one that widened each time he forced out another pratfall or silly quip. On stage he was Pippo, the whirlwind of whimsy whose rubbery limbs defied physics and whose jokes toppled misery from even the sternest faces. Offstage, he was simply Pavel, a man whose laughter died somewhere in childhood, leaving a phantom grin to haunt his heart. A faint rustle broke the stillness. From the darkness near the performer's entrance, a tall figure emerged. Gabriel Czerny, the ringmaster, immaculate even at this hour in a midnight blue tailcoat. His top hat cast a crescent shadow over sharp cheekbones. "Can't sleep again." Gabriel's voice carried the smoky timbre of cigars and secrets. Pavel managed the ghost of a smirk. "You know me, boss. Slapstick is murder on the nerves." Gabriel approached, stopping beneath the drifting light. "The crowd adored you. You should be bathing in euphoria, not doubt." Euphoria. Pavel rolled the word on his tongue like a pill too large to swallow. "That belongs to Pippo. I'm just the keeper of his cage." Gabriel's gaze softened. For an instant, the imperious showman vanished, leaving behind a weary guardian of misfits. "One day, my friend, you'll learn to wear your own face as proudly as that painted one." Pavel tried to respond, but found only silence. Somewhere outside, a train whistle keened, a lonely, wavering note that seemed to slice his chest open. With a curt nod, Pavel rose, shuffled toward the performers' caravans, and disappeared into the night, unaware that his journey toward the psychologist's office and toward truths far darker and brighter than he imagined had already begun. Pavel's earliest memory was of laughter, not his own, but his mother's. A bright, pealing sound that filled their modest Budapest kitchen like bird song at dawn. She would flower his chubby cheeks, pretend he was a pastry fresh from the oven, and chase him around the table until they collapsed in giggles. But when tuberculosis stole her breath and voice a year later, the laughter abandoned their home for good. His father, once a jovial shoemaker, drowned grief in palinka and silence. At 13, Pavel fled the stagnant apartment for the streets, juggling hand-fashioned balls of crumpled newspaper to earn coins from passers-by. It was there, outside the ruins of the new theater, that he first met Zoya Petrovna, tightrope walker, runaway aristocrat, and lifelong friend. She lingered at the edge of the small crowd he had gathered, her green eyes sparking appreciation as he pretended a wayward orange had a mind of its own, bopping him on the head until he snatched it triumphantly from thin air. Zoya introduced him to the Aurelian circus, then camped on the Danube's banks, its faded posters promising marvels. He signed on as an apprentice, sweeping sawdust, fetching water, and memorizing every flourish of the acts. Yet it was the resident clown, old Benoit, who spotted raw potential beneath Pavel's shy demeanor. "Comedy," Benoit said, his French accent curling like pipe smoke, "is the art of pain worn inside out. Let the audience see only the lining." He taught Pavel pratfalls, mime, and the sacred timing of a punchline. During those lessons, Pavel discovered a startling truth. When the crowd roared with laughter, the ache in his chest hushed, if only briefly. Years blurred in a montage of candlelit caravans and clamorous train stations. Pavel grew into Pippo, beloved across continents, while Zoya's name crowned posters in a font nearly as large as the ringmaster's. They were rising stars orbiting the same crimson tent. Yet not even stardom dulled the gnawing sense of emptiness. The more the public adored Pippo, the more Pavel felt erased. He cultivated the clown's persona like an exquisite garden. But behind the hedges, weeds of despair flourished. That winter, the circus set up in the seaside town of Arkborough, England, its boardwalk battered by Atlantic winds. Flyers declared, "The Aurelian Circus, 2 weeks only." Crowds flocked nightly, seeking respite from post-war austerity. On a rain-sleek Tuesday, as Pavel exited the tent after a matinee, a well-dressed couple approached. Their little boy clutched a Pippo souvenir mask. "Thank you," the mother said, her eyes shining. "Our son hasn't smiled like that since the air raids." The boy tugged Pavel's sleeve, whispering, "You fixed the hurt." A warmth bloomed in Pavel's ribs, and then vanished, sucked into the lingering November chill. That night, sleep evaded him. In his caravan, he stared at the dark ceiling and felt the walls close in until he bolted upright, lungs straining. The next morning, he scoured the telephone directory, fingers trembling, until he found the listing. Dr. Elise Dubois, clinical psychologist. No promises of magical cures, just a discreet address beyond the clifftop park. If anyone can stitch the tear inside me, Pavel thought, it must be someone who understands the mind. His appointment was set for Friday at 11. The waiting room smelled of eucalyptus and ink. Through an open window, foghorns moaned, merging with the faint chime of a grandfather clock. Pavel's heart pounded like a runaway drum roll. When the receptionist finally called his name, he nearly lost the courage to stand. Dr. Dubois' office resembled a library more than a clinic. Mahogany shelves crammed with well-thumbed books, an oriental rug, and 2 armchairs angled like confidants in quiet conversation. The psychologist herself was younger than Pavel expected, perhaps mid-30s, with chestnut hair pinned in an untidy bun and an inquisitive gaze behind circular spectacles. She extended a hand. "Mr. Kovac? Please call me Elise." He perched on the edge of a chair, acutely aware of his calloused palms, twisting the brim of his derby hat. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then, as if the silence were an open dam, words flooded forth, halting at first, then torrential. He spoke of sleepless nights, of laughter that tasted like ash, of feeling hollow, even as ovations shook the tent poles. Elise listened without interruption, her pen occasionally gliding across a leather-bound notebook. When he finished, throat raw, she rose and gestured toward the sash window overlooking the distant seafront. "Walk with me," she said. The clifftop path was slick with drizzle, waves bellowing against limestone far below. Elise halted beside a wrought-iron bench and pointed across the town's patchwork roofs to a candy-striped silhouette on the horizon. "Do you see that tent?" Pavel followed her finger. Even from afar, the circus looked festive, a lantern of color amid slate skies. "There is talk," Elise continued, "of a clown there. Extraordinary, they say. Audiences forget sorrow in his presence. If you watched him, perhaps his joy would be contagious enough to chase away your gloom." Pavel's breath caught. Wind whipped his overcoat as the irony sliced deeper than cold. He let out a sound that could have been a laugh or a sob. "Doctor," he whispered, staring at the circus he knew more intimately than his own reflection. "I am that clown." Elise's expression shifted, first confusion, then dawning realization, and finally a gentle sadness. She reached into her pocket, producing a crisp linen handkerchief, and placed it in Pavel's trembling hand. "Then," she murmured, "let us see who lies behind the painted smile." Rain drummed a steady rhythm on the caravan roofs as dawn seeped through slate-blue clouds. Pavel awoke, tangled in sheets, heart thudding from another dream, where laughter echoed down an endless hallway, always receding just beyond reach. He scribbled fragments in a journal Elise had given him. Stage lights flicker, mother calling, mask melts like wax. Writing felt awkward, like tuning an unfamiliar instrument. Yet Elise insisted names gave nightmares less power. Their next session unfolded in the psychologist's warmly lit office. A pot of black tea steamed between them, bergamot mingling with the scent of old paper. Elise tapped the notebook. "You speak to the world through performance, Pavel. Speak to yourself here." He traced the teacup rim. "On the sawdust I know the script. Banana peel, pratfall, applause. Offstage the script is blank pages." Elise leaned back. "Blank pages are invitations, not threats." He wanted to believe her, but the blankness felt like a cliff. Still, he committed to the exercise. Mornings began with silent reflection, evenings with a single line of truth. Today I inhaled after the joke, but could not exhale joy. Back at the circus, preparations for the evening show buzzed like hornets. Zoya practiced on the high wire, arms outstretched to a sky the color of pewter. She descended, cheeks flushed, and fell into step beside him. "You missed breakfast," she chided. "Appetite's playing hide-and-seek," he said. Zoya's brow furrowed. "You worry me, Pipo. The audience sees a sunrise, but after the curtain, you look like twilight." He offered a half-smile. "Seeing Dr. Dubois helps. She says I'm excavating buried feelings. Trouble is, some coffins ought to stay shut." Before Zoya could answer, Gabriel's voice cracked through the tent. "Company meeting. 5 minutes." Performers gathered near center ring. Gabriel's top hat bobbed above the crowd. "Arkborough's mayor will attend Saturday's gala. Press will follow. We must be flawless." His gaze lingered a beat too long on Pavel. Remember, the tiniest stumble becomes a headline. Later in the costume wagon, Clara the seamstress adjusted Pavel's frayed collar. Her deft fingers stitched while she hummed a Hungarian lullaby. Pavel closed his eyes. The melody carried him to childhood evenings when his mother sewed patchwork quilts beneath oil light. "You work miracles, Clara," he murmured. She smiled, threading another needle. "Fabric is honest, Mr. Kovacs. It frays where strained. People do the same." She met his eyes. "Stitch yourself before you tear." Her words lingered as he stepped into the ring that night. The crowd roared. Under spotlights, people bounded, somersaulted, and squirted seltzer at a playful boxer-dog act. Laughter cascaded, but beneath it, Pavel heard Elisa's quiet counsel. Attend to the silence between laughs. When the curtain fell, applause thundered like surf. Yet Pavel felt a growing hush inside, vast as the sea beyond the cliffs. The gala approached with unsettling speed. Posters flapped on lampposts, boasting a night of splendor beneath the Aurelian tent. Gabriel prowled the grounds, perfectionist urgency sharpening his commands. Carpenters reinforced bleachers, electricians tested every bulb along the marquee letters, so no shadow dared mar the spectacle. One overcast afternoon, Pavel returned from therapy to find Gabriel in heated conversation with a stranger outside the ticket wagon. The man's bowler hat and tailored overcoat contrasted with the circus's homespun vibrancy. Pavel caught only fragments. Loan comes due, extension impossible, collateral forfeiture. Gabriel's jaw tightened as he signed a document. The stranger tipped his hat and strode away, shoes crunching gravel like the ticking of a clock. Zoya appeared at Pavel's elbow. Who was that? Someone counting profits that aren't his, Pavel guessed. Zoya's green eyes narrowed. Gabriel would sell his own shadow before the circus. That night, backstage hushed whispers spread. Financiers threatened repossession. Attendance tallies lagged behind debt. Yet the ringmaster presented calm authority, his booming voice promising wonder as always. After the finale, Pavel found Gabriel alone beneath the bleachers, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. You keep the tent from collapsing, Pavel ventured. But who props you up? Smoke curled through dim beams. A ringmaster never shows the crowd his doubts. Offstage isn't the crowd. Gabriel exhaled a weary laugh. You'd think so. He hesitated. My father built the Aurelian from wagon scraps after the war. Banks see only sagging canvas, not legacy. If tomorrow's gala fails, they'll seize everything. These people, our family, will scatter. A cold weight settled in Pavel's gut. Without the circus, he was a compass without north. Later, as rain drummed fiercer, Pavel discovered Clara in the costume tent, inventory sheets strewn like leaves. A single lantern cast gold across her concentrated face. You're working late, he noted. Ledger discrepancies. She grimaced. Fabric costs exceed budgets by a ghostly margin. He frowned. Ghostly. Numbers altered, signatures forged, someone siphoning funds. Pavel recalled the stranger's smug bowler hat. Coincidences felt thin as tissue. Thunder cracked. Their lantern flickered, revealing for an instant a figure outside the canvas door, watching. Pavel sprang to the entrance but found only night and wind-whipped banners. Heart hammering, he turned to Clara. We need proof before tomorrow. Meet me after final rehearsal. Bring the ledgers. She nodded, resolve glinting. Rehearsal stretched past midnight. Zoya's lithe form danced across the wire. Acrobats perfected a human pyramid. Pippo rehearsed a new gag involving a mechanical goose that honked on cue. Yet Pavel's concentration splintered. Each creak of the bleachers, each shadow beyond the floodlights, felt like unseen eyes. When the tent emptied, Pavel and Clara slipped to the accounts trailer. Inside, they sifted paperwork beneath a single bulb. Clara pointed to mismatched ink colors on receipts, expense lines inflated for non-existent repairs. The door creaked. Gabriel stood framed in the threshold, silhouette obscured. Why rifle my records? He asked quietly. Pavel straightened. We found forged entries. The circus bleeds money while a predator circles. Gabriel stepped into the light, face unreadable. "You think I don't know?" He tossed a file on the desk. Inside lay copies of the same falsified receipts, marked with red X's. "I've traced it to Oliver Kearns, the booking agent. He partnered with creditors. Tomorrow he'll ensure the gala underperforms, validate repossession, then acquire the circus for pennies." Clara's gasp echoed. "And we have until dusk tomorrow," Gabriel added, "to thwart him." Pavel felt the weight of sawdust, canvas, and shared history settle on his shoulders. He met Gabriel's gaze. "Then we give Arkborough a show they'll speak of for generations." Gabriel extended a hand. "For the Aurelian?" Pavel clasped it, resolve and fear intertwining. Pavel's boots sank into the muddy ruts of the main road as the circus caravan rumbled toward the border. They were leaving Grenshaven for Bukovina, a river town whose cobblestoned square haunted Pavel's earliest memories. He had not stepped foot there since he was 14, since the night the cathedral bells tolled and a blaze devoured the traveling theater where his mother had danced. Inside the lantern-lit dining wagon, Ringmaster Gabriel unrolled a creased route map. "One night's rest in Bukovina, then onward to the capital," he announced, tapping the parchment. "Ticket sales in Grenshaven were glorious. Let us keep the momentum." Yet Pavel noted the tremor in Gabriel's gloved finger and the dark crescents beneath his eyes. The ringmaster, too, carried ghosts. That evening Pavel sought Doctor, Elise in her modest scarlet-trimmed caravan. Rain hissed on the roof as wood stove embers glowed. "Pavel, we pass through the town I ran from. Whatever I buried there, what if it claws back?" "Elise, memory is a stubborn beast, but you are no longer the boy who fled. You have tools now, and allies." Pavel, almost laughing. "Allies? A lion tamer with debts, a contortionist who speaks only when the moon is full, and a doctor who thinks a pen can stitch a broken soul." "Elise, words can cauterize shame, Pavel. Let's write tonight. Tell me one thing you remember with absolute clarity." Pavel, after a silence. "My mother's perfume. Bergamot and ash." As rain surrendered to dawn, he penned pages, ink smudging where tears fell unseen. Outside, the distant whistle of a train promised passage into yesterday. Bukovina greeted them with mist coiling between lime-washed facades. Townsfolk gathered as the convoy filed past the cathedral ruins. Children pointed at the colorful wagons. Elders crossed themselves, recalling the tragedy 2 decades prior. Pavel dismounted to stretch when a voice drifted from a colonnade, faint, quavering, yet unmistakable. "Pashko, is that you?" He turned. An elderly woman in black veils approached, her cane clicking. It was Madame Rakotsi, the once famed wardrobe mistress of his mother's troupe. "Madame Rakotsi, I would know those eyes anywhere. You are your mother's echo." Pavel. "Madame, I thought you'd left." Rakotsi, touching his cheek. "Left? I have guarded these streets, waiting for atonement." She pressed into his palm a tarnished brass key. The theater cellar survived the fire. "Go tonight, before the new moon fades." Her eyes shone with unshed secrets. At twilight, while crowds thronged the big top, Pavel slipped away. Elise accompanied him, her lantern casting restless shadows along the alleyway. They found the cellar door half sunken behind ivy. The key turned with a sigh. Inside, dust motes floated like phantom applause. Costumes hung shredded, time gnawed. On a charred desk lay a cracked hand mirror. Pavel brushed away soot to reveal an inscription. Pour mon Pashko, continue la danse. His knees buckled. Elise, kneeling. Your mother left this for you. Suddenly boards creaked overhead. A heavier door slammed. They were no longer alone. When Pavel and Elise emerged from the ruins, moonlight revealed a figure leaning against a lamppost. Face powdered white, lips painted in a perpetual crimson grin. The newcomer tipped a bowler hat. Figure. Bonsoir, Monsieur Pipeau. The world's greatest clown, they say. I've traveled far for an audition. Pavel, steadying his breath. The circus is full. Figure. Ah, but your audience is never full. They hunger for novelty. Let me feed them. Gabriel soon introduced him as Mirko the Merry, a last-minute hire to boost ticket sales. His act, juggling flaming scythes while telling jokes so dark the crowd laughed through gasps. Pavel watched from the wings, envy and dread coiling in his gut. After the show, Pavel's juggling pins were found snapped in half, smeared with grease paint. The contortionist had witnessed Mirko slipping away, whistling a funeral march. Confrontation erupted outside the costume tent. Pavel. Sabotage me again, and the only audience you'll have is crows. Mirko, smiling wider. All comedy is cruelty, friend. It's the blade beneath the feather. That night, Pavel dreamed of the burning theater. But this time, Mirko's painted grin hovered amid the flames. The next tour stop hosted a grand fairground with an abandoned mirror maze. Gabriel, ever the showman, proposed a promotional stunt. Pipeau and Mirko would race through the labyrinth at dusk, each mirror lit by candles, while photographers captured their reflections. Elise cautioned Pavel, sensing Mirko's malice, but the clown laughed it off with practiced bravado. Candles flickered as Pavel stepped inside. His reflection multiplied, 100 smiling masks that hid the man beneath. Somewhere deeper, Mirko's laughter echoed, bouncing off glass. Mirko, voice distorting. How do you cheer a town, Pipeau? Show them what they fear to see. Pavel advanced, palms sliding along cool panes. Suddenly the flame of a nearby candle whooshed higher, licking at tattered drapes someone had hung. Smoke spiraled. Mirko appeared across the glass, eyes gleaming. Mirko. History repeats, does it not? Pavel realized the rival had rigged the maze with kerosene-soaked cloths. Panic surged, hallways twisting, fire spreading. He smashed mirror after mirror, seeking an exit. The maze rang with fractured laughter. Outside, Elise alerted crew to fetch axes and water pails. Gabriel barked orders, voice cracking. Inside, choking fumes dredged old terror. Pavel stumbled into a cul-de-sac. Dead end. Flames devoured the path back. Through rippling heat, a reflection shimmered. Not Mirko's, but his mother's, holding the cracked hand mirror. Continue la danse. The words thundered in his pulse. He lifted a weighted juggling ball from his pocket, gifted long ago by the strong man, and hurled it at the mirror wall. Glass exploded. Night air gusted in, clearing smoke enough for him to vault through the breach. Crew hauled him out as the maze collapsed in a fiery groan. Mirko was nowhere to be seen. Elise, wrapping a blanket around him. You faced the nightmare head-on. Pavel, coughing. It isn't over. He wants my mask to shatter. And so do I. Pavel gazed at the distant fairground lights and realized that to dismantle Mirko's cruelty and his own, he would have to unmask before the world, risking the silence that might follow. Night draped its velvet cloak across Bukovina as the circus train rattled into the freight yard. Oil lamps bobbed like errant fireflies, while roustabouts unloaded crates. Pavel lingered beside the weather-beaten carousel that had once belonged to his mother's theatre, salvaged after the fire and sold, only to be repurchased years later by Gabriel. Its chipped cherubs and faded gold scroll work seemed to breathe when lantern light struck the mirrors. Elise appeared, boots crunching gravel. "You've been staring at that thing for 15 minutes. "I used to ride it after rehearsals," Pavel murmured, "back when I still thought every show ended with applause, not nightmares." He traced a cracked panel where 2 cherubs danced over a flaming torch. The torch looked almost new tonight. Elise's eyes narrowed. Was there flame imagery on it before? Never. A chill slithered up his spine. Before they could examine further, a low chuckle echoed from the dark. Out stepped Silvio Grin, the rival clown whose swirling black and white makeup resembled a harlequin apparition. "Ah, Pipo, found your merry-go-round of ghosts?" Silvio's smile never reached his eyes. "What do you want?" Pavel snapped. "To propose entertainment," Silvio purred. "A duel of laughter tomorrow night. 2 clowns, 1 spotlight. Winner keeps the coveted midnight slot in every city for the rest of the season." Gabriel strode up, top hat glinting. The audience adores rivalries. "Shake on it, gentlemen." Pavel's pulse hammered. He felt Elise's hand brush his. She mouthed, "Don't let him bait you." But Silvio extended a gloved hand, red as dried blood. The watching troupe began to chant. Unable to back down, Pavel shook. As their palms met, the carousel lights flickered alive. Music wheezed from its rusted pipes, the same tune that had played the night of the fire. Gasps rippled. A gust extinguished half the lanterns, plunging the yard into patchwork shadows. When the lamps reignited, Silvio was gone, and Pavel's palm stung with a tiny burn mark, shaped like the flaming torch on the panel. Morning rehearsals buzzed beneath the grand canopy. A scent of sawdust and sugared almonds hung in the air. Up on the practice rigging, twin tightrope artists, Jasmine and Noor, glided across a single strand, rehearsing a daring cross-pass. Pavel paced ringside, script in hand, yet his thoughts snared on the burn scar. It throbbed in rhythm with the distant calliope. "Pipo!" Gabriel's bark cut through the cymbals. "Silvio performs at noon. You follow at 1. Keep it fresh. Keep it wild." Pavel forced a grin. "Bigger and brighter than ever, boss." Elise arrived carrying 2 steaming mugs. "Chamomile for your nerves, and I brought these." She revealed a pair of polished leather gloves to hide the mark. "And to remind you that a clown's power lies in what he chooses to reveal." Pavel slipped them on. Relief. Yet as he flexed his fingers, the leather tightened, as though resisting. Elise frowned. "They fit yesterday." "No matter." He tipped an imaginary hat. "Time to rehearse." That afternoon, bleachers filled to brimming. Silvio bounded out first, wielding juggling torches, laughing like a church bell cracked. His routine was flawless. Torches became roses, roses became doves. Doves burst into confetti. The crowd roared. Backstage, Pavel's stomach churned. He donned his multicolored coat, but something felt off. The fabric shimmered between hues, bleeding into darker shades. Elise helped adjust his collar. "Remember what we practiced? The finale with the invisible violin used pathos, not just jokes." Pavel nodded, stepped forward, just as Silvio executed his final gag, igniting a plume of red flame that spiraled up the big-top center pole like a fiery serpent. The audience gasped in ecstasy. The blaze snuffed itself out. Silvio bowed and exited, brushing past Pavel. "Beat that clown, Prince." He winked, and Pavel smelled smoke on his breath. Spotlight. Pavel rolled onto the ring inside a tiny lavender car. Horns squeaked. He tumbled out, hat askew, chasing imaginary butterflies to gentle giggles. Then, as rehearsed, he shifted. Slow violin miming, a forlorn melody only he could hear. Silence draped the tent. Even children hushed. Tears shimmered in a few eyes. He built tension, then released with a pratfall pie to his own face. Laughter burst. But when he reached the finale, producing a single red balloon meant to soar up into light, it popped in his hand with a violent clap, releasing black ash that coated his gloves. A collective shudder swept the crowd. Someone screamed. The spotlight flickered and died, plunging ring and bleachers into darkness. Pavel froze. For an instant, he thought he saw the big top aflame, as on that childhood night. But the vision vanished when emergency lamps flared ruby red. Gabriel's voice barked orders. Ushers guided patrons out. Backstage pandemonium. Silvio leaned in doorway, twirling the popped balloon remnant on his finger. Tragic accident, he mused. Elise shoved past him and grabbed Pavel's shoulders. "You're shaking." "He tampered with my prop." Pavel's voice quavered. "We can't prove that yet," Elise whispered. "But we will." She led him to the medical trailer, where a traveling apothecary examined his burn mark, now blistering in a perfect torch shape. The apothecary's face paled. "This is no ordinary burn. It looks branded." Pavel met Elise's gaze. "Silvio branded me without touching fire." "How?" Elise's jaw tightened. "There's a physics to circus illusions. And then there's something else." Late that evening, the troupe gathered for crisis meeting. Rain hammered the canvas roof. Gabriel slammed his cane. "Tomorrow, Bukovina's mayor attends. If we falter again, permits vanish." Silvio smirked in the corner while tightening his silk cravat. Pavel sat beside Jasmine and Noor, bandaged hand hidden under glove. Gabriel continued, "I propose we merge acts. 2 clowns, alternating beats, twice the laughter, none of the sabotage." Pavel stiffened. Silvio replied first. "I accept on one condition. The carousel becomes our stage centerpiece." A murmur. Pavel shot up. "That carousel is cursed." Silvio's grin split wider. "Cursed? Or simply misunderstood?" Gabriel rapped cane. "Enough superstition. Decision stands. We rehearse at dawn." After midnight, Pavel slipped from his wagon with Elise. They crossed the empty fairground, lantern light dancing across puddles. The carousel loomed, music stilled. Pavel examined the torch panel. The paint felt warm. Elise traced runic scratches near its base. Someone carved these recently. Looks like Romani sigils for transformation and binding. Footsteps squelched. They whirled, lantern casting long twin shadows. Yet no one appeared. A breeze spun the carousel of its own accord. Mirrors glinted, reflecting silhouettes that weren't theirs. A troupe of dancers, a burning theater, a child clown reaching out. Pavel's breath fogged the glass. In reflection, his clown makeup melted into charred streaks. Elise touched his elbow. "Let's go. We need answers outside the circus walls." "Where?" "To the ruins of the Ledger Theater, the night your mother died." Pavel swallowed. "It's a mausoleum now, sealed." "Then we'll find a key." She squeezed his blistered hand. But not alone. Behind them, a tightrope snapped inside the dark tent with a sound like a gunshot. The carousel ground to a halt. Suspense thickened the night air. Tomorrow's show would decide everything, or unleash something far older than any clown's grief. Morning fog still clung to the valley when Pavel wiped the half-finished grease paint from his cheeks. His reflection shimmered. one side blank, the other smeared white like a half-erased moon. Pavel, softly. If the mask lives, the man dies. And if the man lives, will anyone laugh? A knock. Elise entered, holding the cracked hand mirror from Bukovina. She set it beside him. Elise, look at yourself through her eyes, not the crowd's. Pavel inhaled the scent of bergamot that still clung faintly to the mirror's wooden frame. He traced the burn scar beneath his glove. Tonight, I end this. The plan. Gabriel convened a covert council in the empty bleachers. Pavel, Elise, Clara, tightrope twins, Jasmine and Noor, and aging strongman, Casimir. Maps of the fairground were spread over a drum. Goal 1. Prove Silvio's sabotage to the mayor and creditors. Goal 2. Preserve the circus's legacy. Goal 3. Give Pavel freedom from his mask. By choice, not tragedy. Casimir rumbled. I can reroute the fuel line Silvio uses for his fire gag. One pull of this hidden valve and it backfires, without harming patrons. No, Pavel objected. We beat him with truth, not harm. Let's expose him mid-act. Elise proposed a psychological gambit. Silvio thrived on control. Strip the script from him, and he'd reveal himself. Pavel would invite him into an improvised duet before the carousel, a space rigged with hidden limelights and mirrors. Clara revealed a ledger page proving Silvio forged supply orders. Jasmine offered to swing a suspended spotlight to trap Silvio in sudden glare when the moment came. They sealed the pact on Casimir's palm, 5 hands stacked like spokes of a wheel. A visit to the ruins. Before dusk, Pavel insisted on one last pilgrimage, the Ledger Theatre ruins. Elise accompanied him. Sweeping aside police tape, they climbed through a broken window. Charred rafters framed the sky. Beneath the stage, the cellar door hung ajar as if expecting them. Inside lay rows of footlamps twisted by heat. Among ash, they found a blackened ledger. Pages fused, yet one inscription legible. Laughter must never burn alone. Signed S. Gia. Silvio grinned. Elise paled. He knew your mother's troupe. Suddenly boards creaked. Silvio himself stepped from shadows, face gleaming under a hand torch. Looking for closure, Pippo? Some stages never forget. Pavel confronted him. You caused that fire. Silvio's grin hardened. Your mother mocked darkness. I gave it a voice. Before Pavel lunged, Elise grasped his arm. Tonight, Pavel! Silvio only chuckled and melted into the ruins maze. Rage trembled in Pavel's blood, but Elise whispered, He wants you to strike now, to ruin your own show. Wait. Crowds queued at sunset. Lightning spider-webbed distant clouds. Inside, the carousel sat center ring, draped with crimson cloth. Silvio circled it backstage, humming. Pavel stood opposite. No makeup, only gloves and derby. Gabriel announced, 2 masters of mirth will weave one tapestry of wonder. Act 1. Silvio Ascendant. Silvio stepped into the spotlight, juggling flaming scythes again. But this time, Pavel strolled in, extinguished one with a seltzer spray, and juggled it cold, drawing laughter. Silvio scowled, yet bantered, forced to improvise. They jousted with wit, Silvio conjuring dark illusions, a dove that turned into a bat, while Pavel responded with gentle absurdity, a rubber fish that swam through air to chase the bat away. The audience roared, delighting in the duel. The turning point. Jasmine swung the hidden spotlight. A blinding white beam locked on Silvio just as Clara triggered the carousel cloth to fall, revealing mirrors etched with Silvio's forged signatures projected huge by limelight. Gasps rippled. Pavel held up the blackened ledger page. Pavel, voice steady over stunned silence. "Behold the clown who trades laughter for ashes." Silvio's grin faltered. He lunged for Pavel, torch raised. But Casimir dropped from the rigging, seizing Silvio's wrist with iron grip. The torch clattered. A rumble shook the tent. Thunder or something deeper. Silvio hissed words in Romani. The carousel lights ignited of their own accord, spinning madly. Mirrors flashed scenes of the burning theater, screaming dancers, Pavel's mother reaching out. Panic spread. Children cried. Elise shouted to Pavel, "Face it!" She tossed him his mother's cracked mirror. He climbed onto the spinning platform, meeting the apparition's gaze in the glass. "I am not your guilt," he whispered. "I am your legacy." The carousel slowed. Flames snuffed. Mirror images dissolved into ordinary reflections. Terrified families, damp from storm sweat. Silence held. Then scattered applause rose as people realized disaster had been illusion. Police escorted Silvio away. As he passed Pavel, his grin was gone, replaced by bare, shivering lips. Rain hammered tents as patrons dispersed, murmuring about the most unforgettable show of their lives. Inside the ring, oil lamps flickered low. Gabriel surveyed toppled props, then sank to knees, exhausted. The creditors will have to believe now. The mayor approached, umbrella dripping. Tonight was unprecedented. Your courage saved lives. My office will sponsor the Aurelian for years. Gabriel wept openly. Unmasking. Under the still-lit spotlight, Pavel removed his gloves. The burned scar had faded to pale pink. He addressed the remaining troop and crew. "Pavel, all my life, I thought laughter belonged to a painted face. But laughter, real laughter, comes from a heart that knows sorrow. I no longer need a mask to earn it." He lifted a sponge and wiped away the last trace of grease paint as everyone watched. The tent held its breath. Then Jasmine clapped, Noor followed, and soon the entire company applauded. Not Pippo, but Pavel. Quiet aftermath. Elise found him outside, rain easing into mist. Fireflies hovered. "How do you feel?" Pavel considered. Lighter, yet real. He offered her the cracked mirror. "I don't need it anymore." She closed his fingers over it. "Keep it. A reminder that faces change, but courage endures." Casimir approached bearing news. Creditors withdrew. Clara's ledgers cleared debts. The circus was safe. Lightning flickered one last time, illuminating the torn storm clouds above like curtains parting. Dawn hinted on the horizon. Pavel, smiling without paint. Time to write the next act. The chain-link gates of Nepliget Park groaned open, just as a lilac dawn bled across the pest skyline. Pavel's circus wagon rolled in with the tremor of thunder, lingering from an overnight storm. Ahead, the towering dome of the National Circus, its copper roof still scarred from wartime shrapnel, gleamed like a tarnished crown. This was the stage of legends, the arena where Pavel's mother had once danced. A hush blanketed the circus grounds like fresh snow, extinguishing every echo of laughter, save one. A faint, solitary chuckle reverberating through the deserted grandstand. Pavel followed the eerie call into the heart of the big top, where a single spotlight blazed upon a suspended trapeze. Silvio Varga stood beneath, face smeared, costume torn, his once smooth baritone now a rasp of cracked mirth. 10 months later, a pale winter sun hovered above the Danube, gilding the bridges in molten gold. Dr. Elise Dubois adjusted her scarf as she crossed Margaret Island's frost-silvered lawn, following the distant sound of calliope music. Ahead, a modest striped tent, no larger than a market stall, swayed under bare linden trees. Its banner read, "Kovacs and Company, Comedy for the Soul."